First of all, man,
This
thank
is,
you for having
I
me
know this has
here.
been a long time coming.
It has been a long time
We've
coming.
been working to make this happen. I mean, you just had to go and like have your heart stop on you. It's
Yeah,
just,
this is
was
some
that
small
was like
things.
the day we were set to record or the day before or
It
something?
was, I think I think we were supposed to set to record on like the 8th, and it
Yeah.
happened on the 5th.
It was, I mean, it took my breath away. I was so worried about you. And I'm like, why is he emailing us? He's supposed to be focusing on recovery. And so I'm just so glad you're doing okay.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. And also, if that never happened, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to read about the what happened to your son as well in that scary situation. So, just you and I being able to kind of build a relationship before we were going to record anyway. And look, I'm here in your beautiful new office in
This is cool.
Stanford. You didn't have this a couple of months ago.
Yeah,
So
true.
everything comes full circle.
Yeah, for sure.
So tell me a little bit about that and what you learned from what happened to your son.
Yeah. So, this is coming up on the 5-year anniversary, but this was 2019, February 4th, 2019.
It's the day after my birthday.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And, there's a longer story that, you're welcome to share. But effectively, my son was playing with my other son. They were running around our home. He slipped, fell, hit his head on a piece of furniture. I was at work and I got a call from my wife. It's not unusual, by the way, with three, at the time, younger boys, rambunctious.
We got 3 boys too. Yeah.
So like somebody was always bumping their head, and she's like, "Hey, just wanted you to know, Will hit his head. He's upset, but there's no bruising. It's not swelling, and he's crying hard." And I said, "Okay, well, watch it. Let's see what happens." And I'm like, "I've just got a few things to finish up here." And then she called me back. She's like, "He just threw up." And I've dealt with enough head injuries to know that's a bad sign. So immediately I went into like fight or flight mode. I mean, I broke every single law getting home, and got there. And as soon as I saw him, I'm like, we need to take him to the emergency room now. And it was a miraculous 24 hours that we went through getting him to the hospital. They came to us and they were like, we're going to have to life flight him to Yale. Keep in mind, Yale's a 45-minute drive, so life flighting him means that he didn't have 45 minutes to drive. That time mattered. And then miraculously, one of the nurses on staff knew a pediatric neurosurgeon who lived in the area, who 4 or 5 years ago had done a surgery at Stanford, so he had credentials to operate in Stanford. She texted him a picture, which is completely against HIPAA compliance. But if she hadn't done that, he would have never, and he was like, he doesn't have time to go to Yale. I'm coming right now. Keep in mind that I learned later this neurosurgeon had 3 sons. He was in the middle of building Legos with one of his sons. He dropped everything and rushed to the hospital. And the last thing he said to me before he went into surgery, he's like, look, I just want to manage your expectations here. This is a very serious situation. Your son might not make it through the surgery. And if he does make it through, there's a chance that he will have motor impairment or speech impairment. And that's what you should start to prepare for. And that was the last thing he said to me. And the next hour was the longest I've ever experienced in my life. I'm a person of faith like you, and so I spent much of that on my knees. And one of the amazing things that happened during that is after I got up, a man came up to me in scrubs and said, "Do you mind if I say a prayer with you? I can tell you're upset and you could use that." And just said one of the most beautiful, inspiring prayers I've ever heard. Got up, gave him a big hug, tears, and didn't know anything about me, didn't know anything about the situation, but prayed specifically for my son. It was as close to angelic ministering as I've ever experienced in my life. And an hour later, the doctor came out and said the surgery had gone well. He didn't know what the outcome would be. My son was intubated, which means that he had a tube put into his throat to breathe. And he would wake up in the morning, and then we would start to assess what we were dealing with. Um, Will not only woke up the next day, but full-throated pulled the tube out, which is not great, but also great that he had the strength and the, mental cognition to be able to do that. And recovered over the next 6 days, has had no mental impairment, no physical impairment. He's incredibly athletic, and what I've shared with people recently is we have these Connecticut statewide standardized tests that get administered every year, and the school called us to say he got a perfect score, which doesn't happen very often.
Wow.
And so he's doing incredibly well, but ultimately there were so many amazing things that happened during that, and I'm sure for you, probably similar. You would never want to go through that again, but you also wouldn't trade that experience for anything. There's no amount of money that somebody could pay me to take away what it meant for me to see the humanity in my team, in the people that reached out. I mean, the amount of people, and I'm not as big into social media as many, but I decided to write the story and post it. The amount of times that story got read, it got picked up by a magazine. Medium put it on the cover page of their family, and so it just was a really unique experience. And the greatest blessing for me was I got to see the goodness in other people. So much time we talk about all the the divisiveness and how separated we are, and when it counts, people are really good, and that to me is something that I hold on to when things are tough.
Man, God is so good in those situations too, and it just goes to show that those kind of situations, the darkest hours, the just you don't know what the next hour is going to bring.
Yeah.
You don't know what the next day is going to bring. There's just uncertainty. Like those
Yeah.
are the times where he really reveals himself in different ways through other people, through random acts of kindness, like
Yeah.
the angelic moment of being with the nurse, right? Like,
The follow-up story to that is I called the hospital the next day and I said, hey, I'm trying to find this man who came and knelt with me, and they were like, describe what he was wearing. I was like, he was in scrubs. They were like, what color were the scrubs? I was like, they were purple. I mean, I didn't even register at the time, but like as I was going back through, I was like, I think they were purple. They were like, that's our janitorial staff. So this was a man who was cleaning the building, who took the time to kneel and spend time with me, and the clarity with which he voiced his prayer. I mean, again, I realize that everybody falls on different, it's a spectrum of belief, right? For me, my faith has been fortified by challenging, trying experiences. But I've also found that people tend to get pretty divided when things go wrong or when things are hard. And obviously we had a good outcome in terms of what ended up with Will, but I don't think that's what built the faith for me. It was everything around that. I don't want to have my faith be dependent on the outcome. I want it to be dependent on the experience. And ultimately, what I found is the people that I admire most, the people that I look up to the most, the people that I aspire to be more like, choose to doubt their doubts before they doubt their faith. And that was a line that was said to me a long time ago, and I just love that. I love that. When you have the opportunity to see good, to see the good, and to really recognize and experience it. And being grateful is a big part of being happy, I think.
Doubt your doubts before you doubt your fears.
Your faith.
Your faith, sorry.
Yeah.
Doubt your doubts before you doubt your faith. That is an extremely powerful line. So that was in 2019. 2019. Do you think that, because, just being a part of this incredible brand, being a part of Rhone, I'm so blessed, I'm so grateful to for the past couple of years, seeing what you guys were able to do throughout the pandemic and just being a real leader in the space, in the mental health space, and just really treating your employees well. And just everything that I read, everything that I saw was super inspiring. Do you think that this experience that you had to go through as a family, as a leader, helped you kind of carry you guys through like the trying times of the past couple of years?
There's no question, like no question at all for me. I mean, it's one thing to talk a lot about mental health and challenges, but one of the reasons why we talk about it is it's like anything else. You need to build up a reservoir. You need to fill your tank. And it's easier to do that when times are easy, but you don't know. You couldn't have predicted that this was going to happen to you, but you had done the work. You had kind of prepared yourself to be more resilient so that when a hardship came, you were more prepared for it. And I think in that moment, it was a challenge of the work that I had been doing to teach myself how to handle the lows as much as experience the highs. And it also put everything in perspective for me. And so, you know, before that, if there was something going wrong, I might stress about it or worry about it a bit more. After that, it was, this kind of pales in comparison. You almost have to guard yourself against it, right? Because everything you can almost feel apathetic towards everything at that point. But it's been a big part of the journey for me. And I also got to see the Rhone community come alive. You know, one of the cool experiences of that is every year we've done a family goal for the last 7 or 8 years. And this particular year, 2019, we had set a family goal to walk, bike, or run the equivalent distance from Connecticut to Manila in the Philippines. And I can't remember the exact distance. I think it was like 8,000 miles.
Whoa.
There's a reason for this. My in-laws, my wife's parents, were living in Manila at the time, doing humanitarian work there. And that was the goal. And if we could reach that, we were going to celebrate and go visit them. And so every single week, everybody in the family wore a tracker, except for my youngest, who I think was 3 at the time. So we kind of like just estimated how much he was moving. But we had a Google spreadsheet, and every single week, everybody got to put in their miles. And we all had like a target of what we were trying to hit. And of course, my wife and I were like, okay, we got to carry the team here a little bit. So we were like, I can't remember what the target was, but it was high. A lot of biking happened at the end to kind of make sure we were hitting there. But one of the things that Will was like in the first day when he woke up, he's like, Dad, I'm not going to be able to get my miles this week. And and I mentioned something about that like he was so in tune with this idea of like contributing to the family. And man, it's hard to talk about any of this without getting emotional. There were 2 guys in our community, Kyle Axman and Casey, and they sent me a video of them running in the park, and they said, "We're getting the miles for you this week, Will." And I couldn't stop getting emotional about the fact that they decided to take the time to do that. You know, you get to see how much people care when you really give them an opportunity to show it. And for me, the community's always been so much more than selling another pair of shorts. We have competitors out there that try and like imitate the playbook of getting influential trainers together, and you know, I don't think it works because it's the end goal is different. For us, the end goal is about empowering and giving people the ability and the tools to build their best lives, right? For others, it's about how do I sell another pair of pants or another pair of workout shorts. And that's just never been the destination for us. It's never been about the money. And the brand is the vehicle to deliver a message. And of course, we need to sell product in order to employ these people, in order to spend money on marketing, in order to increase the size of the megaphone. But ultimately, that's just not the end goal. Is to improve people's lives.
Rhone for me, wearing Rhone is always, when I put it on, it's so much more than just like putting on clothing to me. Like it's always felt like I am putting on like armor, like a knight putting on armor. Like, you know, like I'm going to war, like in this world, like there's a lot of darkness out there. Like I've always feel super confident. One of the things that I love is like every time I look down, like there's a message, you know, while living, I want to live well. my shorts have something, my sweatshirts have something so unique, but it's such a gentle reminder because a lot of times I've been wearing like these shirts and in a day where I'm not feeling it. I don't
Yeah,
feel like
yeah.
talking to people. I don't feel like being social.
Sure.
I don't want to bring the energy.
Yeah.
And then I might just look down and I'll just see that. Right. So
Yeah.
where does this unique hidden message on these taglines on all the clothes, where does that come from?
Well, I mean, life is a game of margins, right? So I found that people that I admire, and you can measure success in a lot of different ways, but people that are successful by any different measurement, it's not that they don't have low energy days or bad days or moments where they're like, I don't feel like doing this. The difference is in how they choose to react to those moments versus people that, kind of give in and succumb and say, all right, I'm just not doing it, right? And so that margin, that moment when you're not feeling well or when you're down, how you choose to respond to that, if we can make any difference in that moment, that's a big deal for us because I think that that changes the way people live. And part of the reason for the quotes is when we came into the space, we noticed every brand was so loud in terms of like logo on the chest. In fact, we now have people like begging us to do more logo T-shirts, and they want to show that they're wearing the brand more proudly. But
Right.
you know, everything was about external facing. If you're wearing the shirt, you can't read the message that's on your shirt. It's to show people what you're wearing. But really, we wanted to do the exact opposite. We wanted to impact the person wearing the product. In fact, when we first launched, and I was showing somebody, like, one of the things that separates us is we have these quotes, and they were like, "Why did you put them upside down?" I was like, "Oh, they're not for you. They're for the person wearing the product."
Yeah.
And I was saying this to this group. I remember we were talking to the studio, and one of the guys in the room started getting really emotional. And he's like, "Do you mind if I just share a quick story with you?" I said, "Sure." He said, "My father was a World War II veteran, and he had a major impact in my son's life, and he passed away a couple months ago. And when he passed away, my son got a tattoo of his signature on his front knee, so that every time he's working out and he looks down, he'll be reminded of his grandfather. But it's to face up. And people say to him all the time, 'Why is that signature upside down?'" And I just think that's just the way we approach it. Is like, our goal is to improve the lives of the people wearing the product. It's not only to provide really incredible, great product, well constructed, well thought out, multifunctional, really, really comfortable, but this is one additional way that from a vehicle standpoint, we can deliver a message, which is, you're enough, give yourself patience, take care of yourself, not just physically, but also emotionally, spiritually, mentally. And it's because that's what we're trying to do too. We don't come from a place of like preaching or we've arrived. We're just like, hey, we're in this together. This is what's worked for us, what's working for you. Let's share that. Let's build off of it.
You shared that you wrote down in a journal, I want to build a brand that matters. And that was something that you thought about a lot before ultimately starting Rhone.
Yeah.
I know you have had experience starting other businesses in the past.
Yeah.
You worked at the NFL. When did you write that in the journal, and how long did it take to come to fruition?
Yeah. Well, so I wrote that the year we launched, or the year I decided to go down that road. And you can hear ambulances and police cars, but you can also hear the train going past. I was on this Metro North train, and I found it to be like the great equalizer in my life. If I wasn't getting enough rest, which was like almost always, I'd get a little nap on the train. If I didn't have enough time to read, I would spend time reading. But one of the things that I really committed myself to doing was just writing. And I was struggling so much with this idea of, I have, in theory, the greatest job ever. I work at the National Football League. It's the most successful sports league in the world. It is a tremendously exciting organization to be a part of. Football is my favorite sport. Why am I unhappy working at this place? All my friends are like, "Oh my gosh, you have the coolest job ever," and uh, and yet I was unhappy. And part of it was because I felt like what I was doing didn't ultimately matter. that they could have found somebody, and they didn't ever like say it overtly, but there was kind of this underlying message: we could replace you. We've got resumes from the top MBA schools all over the country, and everybody's replaceable. And so that's kind of how I felt: is this doesn't matter if I'm here. It doesn't matter if I double this league sponsor. And so part of for me was finding meaning in my work. And I knew that didn't mean running a nonprofit. I wanted to build something because I believe that, building profitable, great businesses is one of the best ways to impact the planet, to impact people's lives. So I didn't know what it meant yet. I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. And then I was going to start opening my eyes and ears and being open to what that would look like. And the idea for Rhone came like 6 or 7 months later.
So how'd the idea come about?
Well, while I was working at the league, I come from a big family. There's 6 kids in our family.
What are you in the order?
I'm number 3, so I'm a middle child. What about you?
I'm the oldest of 4.
Okay, all right, nice. Yeah, good, oldest, responsible.
Yes.
You got all the things. I was the wacky entrepreneur, which fits like perfectly with middle child. But so one Christmas, my mom decided her gift forever has always been to give all of us a pair of pajamas. It's like nice, democratic, like everybody's happy. And so this particular year, she went out shopping with my younger brother's, at the time, girlfriend, now his wife. She's Canadian, and she was like, I got to take you to the store, Lululemon. And so they bought everybody a pair of sweatpants, brought them home, and that was the gift. No pajamas, everybody got a pair of sweatpants. Now, keep in mind, at the league offices, I got free Nike, free Under Armour product, and I put these on. I was like, wow, this product, the fabric's really nice. But I wasn't really familiar with the brand. And my brother-in-law was like, you can't wear that. That's a woman's yoga brand. And I was like, what are you talking about? It's a pair of sweatpants. He's like, look at the logo. Look at the packaging. You want to wear that logo? And I was like, honestly, I don't really care what the logo looks like. I just feel like the pants are comfortable. And I think mostly that's how guys think. But then I'm at the league offices. This is like a month later. And we had this big campaign happening. We partnered with Budweiser. They sent a box of product in the office for the team to wear. And the women got Lululemon product and the men got Nike product. And I've just always been a curious person and not afraid to ask questions. So I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Lululemon makes men's product. I have some of their sweatpants. And Nike clearly makes women's product. So why didn't they just pick one brand? And the guy next to me, who's still a very close friend of mine, was like, oh, you wear Lululemon? I was like, hold on. I wouldn't say I like wear Lululemon. I have a pair of their sweatpants. And he said, well, no, that's cool. Do you buy your underwear at Victoria's Secret? So I was like, I just don't understand why this is a thing. So I ended up calling my brother-in-law, and I was like, hey, I just had a similar experience. He's like, we should start our own brand. And I was like, no, the world does not need another clothing brand. And that's kind of what I was saying for a month. He's like, think about it. It could be so great. And what hit it for me was kind of going back to this idea of I want to build a brand that matters, and seeing that there was an opportunity in the space and the ability to deliver a message that was completely different than every active brand out there. Every single active brand was about, you're an athlete, move faster, run harder, lift more weights, jump higher, you can have it all. And I was like, that's an important part of my life. It facilitates everything. I've always, been into exercising and maintaining my body and, eating well. But it wasn't the only thing in my life. In fact, I would say it was like definitely the minority part of my life. So Rhone came together for me when I was like, okay, there's a market opportunity to go after, and we can build a brand that I think is really unique in the space in terms of our message, ethos, and folks. At the time, nobody was talking about mental health. Now it's become, a really important topic for good reason. But, we have people who are new to the brand. They're like, well, of course you're talking about mental health. I'm like, we've been talking about mental health from the beginning. It was in our founding documents. So yeah, it's been an important part, but that's how the brand started.
Where does the name Rhone come from?
So Rhone is a river and a glacier that starts in Switzerland and runs down the eastern corridor of France. And what we loved about it is rivers are kind of beautiful, powerful tokens, momentums about life. It just keeps moving forward. It can't slow down. It won't stop. That's how time is. I said something to my son the other day where I was like, I'm loving all the stuff we're doing. Like, I wish you would never grow up. And he goes, Dad, that's not how time works. And I was like, you got me. It's true. And so part of it is learning how to flow with the river. So we like that idea of powerful symbolism. It was also a functional trade route. It's a beautiful part of the earth. There's actually two. A lot of people know the painting Starry, Starry Night by Van Gogh. There's actually two Starry, Starry Nights. The second is called Starry, Starry Night over the Rhone. And it's one of the few paintings of his that has people in it. It's beautiful. It's inspirational, and we knew we could get access to the domain and the social handles, and it just felt like a powerful brand. And it's been fun to build it.
So how about the 3X's
Yeah.
right here? It's one of the, in my opinion, one of the like cleanest, sleekest logos out
Thank
there.
you.
And I personally like, you were talking about how people want
Yeah.
more like logos on
branded,
the,
yeah.
but I actually like the cleanness, how it's kind of hidden.
Yeah.
Because I'll also see somebody, I look at people in the gym.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm like, oh, there you go.
Yeah, he knows.
You can spy it. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's I mean, that's part of. We didn't want to have no logo because it's important that people understand like the brand that they're committing to, and in some ways it becomes a little bit of a status symbol of like, and a club of like, this is what I'm a part of, and so we wanted to represent it somewhere, but we were really focused on getting that logo right. And it's tricky. Like, you think it's easy to build an icon, and then you're like, oh wow, so and so does such and such. And we've actually been amazed at how many brands since launching have used some iteration of an X in their logo. But we were really glad to be there early using it. So it comes from a couple places. First, I shared with the agency that we were working with at the time in terms of inspiration, this story from growing up that we had. So my dad was big in storytelling, poetry. That was like, we spent a lot of time getting around the dinner table or Sunday nights with him just like sharing messages and stories, and that's just kind of the way we were raised. And he used to have this book called the Book of Virtues, and he would open it up and like read this, these tales and fables. And there's one by Aesop that he used to share with us often because we needed to hear it, about a farmer and his three sons who, the way the story goes is these three sons were out in the field, they were fighting, they were arguing, and the father brought them in, and he sent them back into the woods to each come back with 2 sticks. And so they each brought 2 sticks back. So now there's these 3 brothers, each holding 2 sticks. And he said, all right, now each of you break the stick over your knee. And all of them were able to do it, and it was easy. Then he took the remaining 3 sticks and he bundled them together. And he said, all right, now break it. And all of them tried, including the oldest brother, and none of them could. And the message to them was pretty simple. Separated you are weak, but united you are strong. And so that was kind of the message that we were going out to, was this idea of, growing up, you build bonds with men in particular, build bonds playing sports, right? In the locker rooms, in the activities that you're doing. And then you grow up, you go to college, you build bonds with the people that you might be in a club or a fraternity. Then you go off to work, and you have some relationships at work and friendships, but that natural bond of doing hard things together, mostly gone. And there's a reason why there's a male epidemic around loneliness right now. A lot of news organizations have been reporting on this, and it's gotten worse, 300% worse since the pandemic in terms of increase in anxiety, depression among people. And so this was a core part of the message, is that, look, if you try and go at life alone, it's going to be tough. But when you learn to rely on each other and not just compete with each other, you can compete with each other and get better, but build friendships. But if you're divided, you're going to be weak. If you're united, you're going to be strong. And we've always kind of said this: we get stronger together. And so that's where the logo comes from. It's this idea of stitches rely on each other. They're they're weak independently. If you just have a single stitch, you can pop it, but stitches overlap with each other in order to create strength. So stitching is in our clothing. It's almost this emblem of these three sticks, kind of how they come together. And yeah, it's been a powerful reminder for me when I see it of don't try and do this by yourself. Just don't try and do this by yourself. Do it, learn to rely on each other and build connections and reach out to people.
Well, so one of the things that you guys have been doing is the mind and muscle meetups, right?
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, one of the challenges that we've had is when we try and get guys to talk about their feelings, there are some that are more naturally inclined to do that than others. Most of the time, guys will do it because they know it's important. It's like, for them, it might be like getting in an ice bath. Nobody's necessarily like excited to get in the ice bath, but they're like, I think this will make me stronger. So what we found is that the best way to get people loose, you talk about alcohol being a social lubricant. This is better, I think, is to get people moving together, to get people to sweat and exercise together. So, and the idea came from my kids again, because what I found is if they came home from school and I was like, hey, how's school, around the dinner table, that was the last thing they wanted to talk about. But if we went outside and I was pushing them on the swing, or they were running around and I'm like, hey, what happened, today? They're like, oh, so-and-so did, such and such. And so movement makes people more vulnerable in a positive way. And so the idea was, could we do a 20 to 30 minute body weight workout followed by a discussion that is more just a way of like, we've called it group therapy. It's probably, there's going to be somebody in the comments who will be like, you're not a therapist, you're not qualified. It's true, I'm not a therapist, I don't pretend to be one. But really just a conversation. How are you feeling today? If you could explain your emotion in one word, what would you say? And so those are the types of conversations that we have. We've done well over 100 of these, and the themes that come out of it, so powerful. We've had people openly talk about attempted suicide. We've had people talk about difficulties with their partners. We've had people talk about really feelings of self-loathing, or feeling of imposter syndrome, or just all of the above. And then there's the subtlety of like, I just feel alone and depressed and I don't know why I feel that way. And somehow expressing these feelings openly, your worst fears, oftentimes with a group of strangers, people leave and they're like, wow, I feel lighter. And that is part of the power of therapy, right? But oftentimes therapy can be daunting and intimidating, and I don't know where the first step is, but really the first step is just to talk to someone. The number one indication of positive mental outcomes is if you just have somebody to talk to for 2 minutes a week to just check on you. Not like, hey man, how are you? It's like, no, how are you? To really have that conversation. If you have that in your life, your likelihood of having a positive mental outcome versus not having that is substantially higher. More than medicine, more than prescription medicine. And prescription medicine has a place, and I'm not saying, for some people that's really, really important, but at a baseline, you should be having some level of social connectivity where you have the ability to check in on someone. And if you don't have that in your life, you start doing it to someone else, you'll find how quickly that gets reciprocated.
Who's that person for you?
I'm lucky. I've been fortunate to have a few people like that in my life, but outside of my wife, who's kind of my my trusted partner, I've got 3 brothers that are kind of built in that way, and we're pretty honest with each other. And then we've got a couple of really close friends that I just we look at each other like, how are you doing? And the answer isn't always I'm good. Sometimes the answer is struggling and I'm having a tough week, or I'm going through this. And even just the expression of saying that versus keeping that in is a huge part of the healing for me.
So you're how old right now?
40.
40.
Yeah.
Big 4-0.
Yeah.
So a little bit older than me, but I think
I'm about double as old.
Nah, not quite. I'm 24, so not quite there. But I think even still, my generation growing up in this very digital world, and I was born in '99, so less of like the high schoolers right now who are really like they were handed an iPhone in 4th grade.
Yeah,
Like,
sure.
it was even still like I didn't get a phone until 7th grade.
Yeah.
I didn't get a smartphone until like I was in high school.
Yeah.
So I still had
Some of that, yeah.
some of that
Yeah.
in my youth. But I think now more and more, and forever to this point, like technology is such a prevalent part of society.
Right.
And I was on the subway this morning and I was like, man, like we are jam packed together right here, and nobody even like wants to look at each other
Yeah.
in the eye, right?
Yeah.
And in this digital world, especially going through the COVID and everything is just virtual. It's like
Yeah.
people are working virtual. It's like, oh, let's we can just hop on a call. We can do this. We can do that.
Yeah.
But there's nothing like that in-person connection.
No.
Like you said, that really gets people to open up. Like you can't do one of those things.
You
virtual.
can't replicate it.
You can't replicate it virtually.
Even podcast interviews in person versus like on Zoom.
Yes.
It's not the same.
It's not the same at all.
Yeah.
It's not the same at all. So I'm curious, almost like, give me some advice here on, you and I together, like how can we really reach this like next generation of like young men to facilitate real connection and brotherhood?
Well, I think you're doing part of the work. Part of the challenge is that there's going to be a lot of negative content on these social platforms. And we could take the ostrich approach and be like, stick our head in the sand and pretend it's not happening. I don't tend to subscribe to those kinds of like, just get off social media or just like block it. I think there's a challenge for us to say, how do we positively contribute to this? Put some guardrails around it, but learn to coexist with the tech. One of the fun things that I did with my kids this last week is, you're hearing about ChatGPT and AI and what it's doing to the world and how it's going to, and so many people are like, this is going to destroy us. It's, it's going to make us less creative and we're not going to do it. I'm like, I think this is like the internet, right? The internet was scary to a lot of people. Like, I'll never put my credit card on the internet. And, in general, the economy's gotten stronger with it. People have gotten more efficient. There's certainly some dangers and challenges that have come with it. But how do we coexist with this tech? So I brought it home and I said to the kids, I'm like, I'm going to show you guys something cool. Give me an idea for a picture you want to create. And I remember they were like, let's do a sea turtle driving a punch buggy with a rabbit wearing a tuxedo and a top hat in Paris. That was
a vibe.
That was the
vibe.
image that they created. And when I like put it into ChatGPT and it created the image, they were laughing for like 10 minutes. And for the next hour, all they wanted to do is be like, what else could we create? I mean, we created a story around like a kingdom run by sloths, and like there were people who would bring them, raisins. It's just like their creativity ran wild.
Right.
And so, yeah, I could have used ChatGPT to do 100 things. What did we choose to use it for? We choose to unleash their creativity and figure out how to coexist. And so, when it comes to this, I think your generation is so much better than the generations older because you've had to learn how to coexist with it. I didn't get my first cell phone until I was in college, and my first smartphone until well after that. And so I'd laugh sometimes when people talk about IRL. I'm like, so what? I thought that was all there is in real life,
right.
And but I think it's so easy for people in the older generations to be like, kids these days, it's like grandparents are as bad as, like being addicted to tech as young. It's just, how do you choose to coexist with it? You've got to learn to put guardrails on it, set up accountability systems, learn to use things like screen time management. I always laugh when people are like, I don't have time for this. I'm like, let me see your phone. Let me show you your screen time settings. Do you realize how much time you spend on this? And it's easy. It's easy to do. These things were created to make us addicts. But just like anything else, any addiction is, the opportunity to fight. You could lay down against it, or you could decide to figure out how to coexist and work with it. And so I think you have to be intentional. I think that's the way to do everything is, how are you going to live your life? You clearly live your life this way. You're intentional about what you want, what you're trying to get out of it, versus just letting it push you through. You're deciding the direction. You're in the river. You can't necessarily guarantee where you're going to end up, but you can guarantee which way you want to head.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I don't know that I have perfect advice, but I think I think you have to learn how to coexist.
Totally. And I love the river analogy. It's something that my co-founder Sean and I have talked about a lot. It's just like trust and surrendering to
Yeah,
the river
yeah,
and the flow of life. You
yeah.
know, if you try to resist it,
Too much.
you're
Yeah, it
gonna
doesn't work.
drown.
Yeah,
You're gonna get
yeah,
hurt. Like you're gonna get lost.
yeah,
Just surrender. So I love that you guys that you live by that as well.
yeah,
I love how you're the CEO of this company, but you're also the CEO of like your household, you know. And I
yeah.
love that that is one of your
Co-CEO of the household.
co-CEO of the household.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like the dynamic between, you know, work and life, and being a father, being a leader in this space, volunteering, doing all that you do. How does one positively impact the other?
It's a lot of people talk about balance, and I think it's a really tricky word
Mm,
because it almost means that you're compartmentalizing things. Like, this is how much time I would bucket towards work. This is how much time I would bucket towards family. And first of all, life doesn't really work that way. Like, sometimes you're traveling for work. Well, how are you gonna bucket that? And so the word that I've heard used that I really love is harmony. How do you get these things to work together that when the sounds are playing together, they sound better than when they're alone, right? That really kind of resonates deeply with me. And so I've frankly found that when I'm on, I'm on like all cylinders, and when I'm off on all. Like, it just doesn't work. And so it's about bringing shared learnings in each. For example, what I learn in the home in working with my wife to create good plans and intention and accountability systems and tracking for our kids, I try and bring into the workplace, and vice versa. Like, in our team, we do long range planning, and we call them LRPs. And there's lots of acronyms in business.
oh
These
yeah.
long range plans, where we're doing 3 to 5 year plans. We're starting to think about how we would shift inventory, what markets, what categories we're gonna go into, and picking our head up to think that way. I had never thought to do that in my house or my family. I knew goals, but that's different. This is like, how are we going to get there? So this probably started 12 years ago with my wife. I'm like, we need to do an LRP. And she was like, what on earth does that mean? She loves to tell people this story that it was her birthday, and I had already given her a good present. We couldn't afford very much at the time, and so I booked us like a little cabin I think it was in Vermont, and we were going to go there for 2.5, 3 days. So I surprised her. I even packed her bag, which is like such a dangerous thing to do. But I'm like, we're not going out. We're just staying in the cabin. And the other thing I packed was a giant whiteboard. And so we get up to the cabin. I open the back. I had this Jeep, and the first thing I pull out is a whiteboard. She's like, "What? Are we playing like Pictionary?" And I told her, I'm like, "No, I put together a whole plan on everything we're going to talk about." And we went through everything one at a time: kids, finances, our vacations. We planned it out. We were intentional. And even though she was skeptical at first, she now pushes me to do this. We do this every single year. We have a couples retreat. We always run 5 miles together. We always talk about each of the kids individually for at least kind of, a significant amount of time. How are they doing? How can we help them in school? How can we help? And then we come back with like a renewed sense of intention, and what are the habits that we're trying to tweak and the behaviors we're trying to track. And, you know, that's what it means for me to live in harmony with work and home. If I didn't have work, my home life wouldn't be as good. And if I didn't have my home life, I know the way I think about reacting to people's, situations. Every single day, I find out about the hardest thing that somebody in our company is going through. They lost a loved one, their sibling got diagnosed with cancer, and learning how to be human in those moments, which I learned from my wife and from my kids and my family, changes the way I react to them.
Mm.
And in the nonprofit sector, I'm really fortunate. I chair a nonprofit called Beyond Type 1, which was founded by Nick Jonas, and it's all for those living and impacted by type 1 diabetes. I was diagnosed 15 years ago, so it's very important for me in my life. And it's kind of a culmination of all those things. So I don't know. I think they play off each other. I think you learn in the situation.
Well, I really appreciate all that you do and sharing all that and all the podcasts that I've listened to, the articles I've read, and just following along with you.
Thank you.
Is how it's never just about building the biggest, athleisure, athletic sportswear company. It's always about something greater and
Thank you.
everything that you do. I'm curious, what is the one thing that you would say you're most proud of in your life?
That's tough. I mean, I think the thing that I strive for the most is I really want to be the person that my wife and kids believe me to be in all settings. We can easily become chameleons and adapting to our environment, but I don't want to have a different character at work or when I'm just with, my guy friends. I want to be consistent. And consistency is hard for somebody like me who still struggles to this day with ADD and, trying to be consistent. And I think the thing that I really hold the closest to me are my values and principles, and try really hard to be consistent so that, the people at work and the people at home and the people in the nonprofit, if I die tomorrow, I hope they'll all say the same thing about me. I don't want to be a different person in each of those environments. So I wouldn't say I'm most proud of that, other than that's what I prize the most and what I strive for the most.
No, I love that. And I really appreciate just your openness, your vulnerability, and it's not, your proudest achievement isn't just starting a business or having a family or being a dad. It's a culmination of everything. And I love how you say harmony, because I don't like the word balance either, but harmony is, I think, the perfect word to describe it all. And that is something I'm going to take moving forward and try to find harmony. My last question for you before we wrap this up, and one, just thank you for everything today. Thank you for welcoming me in here.
Yeah.
It's been amazing that we finally got to do this.
Yeah.
This is the Pure Ambition podcast. So when you hear those words together, Pure Ambition, what does that mean to you, and how does it apply to your daily life?
I mean, I think ambition is a good thing, and I think it can be harnessed the right way. And as we talked about, you can be apathetic when you start putting things in perspective. Like, we're a dot in the universe in the grander schemes. Like, if what I do doesn't really matter. But I like the idea of drive and thriving and growing. And so, for me, it's just you hear this phrase of can't teach old dogs new tricks. I'm like, I want to be the exact opposite. I want to learn from every single experience I've had. I want to be better at learning and growing and developing when I'm 60 than I am at 40. And I know I'm better at 40 than I was at 20. And I might not be able to do everything that I could do when I was 20, but I look at guys like Ken Rideout and I'm like, I have no excuses.
No.
He's got me on 12 years. I run marathons half as fast. So, for me, it's about never giving up. It's about, our mantra is forever forward. It's part of that river flow. Just keep going. The only thing that will get you down is when you quit.
Dude, unreal. Thanks so much for everything today. If people want to connect with you, if they want to check out some of Rhone stuff, what's the best way for them to connect or follow you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the social channels by force sometimes with our team. But it's just Nate Checketts, and LinkedIn and Instagram are probably the places I'm most active. And then our website is rhone.com, RHONE.com. And we've got a lot of really exciting stuff coming up in 24. I think 24 will be our 10-year anniversary. We've got a 10-year anniversary collection coming. We've got more retail stores coming. We've got huge partnerships that are going to land. And I think it's going to be our best year ever.
I'm stoked to be a part of it. I can't wait to see everything that you're going to do. Thank you for everything, man.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you guys so much for tuning into today's episode. I wanted to give you all a heads up too that I launched a free community on the Upspace app where you can join, ask me questions, connect with like-minded individuals, follow my 4-week running and strength training program that has some dedicated mobility sessions in there as well, so that we can all optimize our health and fitness together. So if you're interested, head over to the App Store, download the Upspace app, and join the Pure Ambition community today. Love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.